What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about what's going on with the data that's dropping early on in the morning that's going to cause some volatility, and also what you should be watching for in terms of levels for Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just 9 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so looking at the market right now, the market's gapping up like crazy, continuing to look relatively nice. But the problem is we've pumped very, very hard in a very short period of time, and many stocks are very, very overbought. Now, I just want to remind everyone that don't forget that as we approach Wednesday, yes, the market's going to likely try to hold up, but we have Nvidia's earnings coming out as we approach Wednesday. So, yes, I do think Nvidia is going to continue to hold up. But we might start off with a slight pullback in the market. It's a very, very healthy, tiny little intraday pullback. We might see SPY drop just a couple of dollars before we get another bounce intraday. And then the market's going to continue to hold up, of course, approaching the earnings for Nvidia. But then after that, everything could change. So don't forget to watch for that. And for earnings for today, we have Lowe's and Macy's coming out for the morning, not to mention Toll Brothers and a few others later on after the market closes. Now, for the morning today, I just want to remind everyone we have existing home sales data coming out, then the manufacturing numbers from the Fed. This is going to cause some volatility for the first 30 minutes, specifically at 10 o'clock a.m. New York time or Eastern time. Make sure you guys are prepared for that. We're going to see some high volatility because of this. This could change the direction the market moves in, so just be prepared just to be safe. Now, on top of all of this, right, later on during the day at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, we have some Fed speakers like Bowman speaking, so they can cause some more volatility. Maybe it's not going to be that crazy because the Fed is not as insane as of right now in terms of causing volatility when they just speak. It's usually just Jerome Powell that causes the bigger moves. So we'll have to wait and see on that. This could lead to some changes. Maybe they pump the markets or not. But I do believe it's going to be very important to watch the market carefully today, especially looking at the formations. Now, looking at some important things to know about the market is we have tech leading, so far holding up quite decently. There's some news coming out right here about how mortgage rates ended up soaring on Monday, hitting their highest mark in the last 23 years. The 30-year fixed mortgage reached about 7.48%, which is pretty insane. And then on top of that, looking at some earnings, things are not looking that bad. We also saw some nice looking IPOs. And besides that, we have some new things going on. So nothing too huge on that end from down there. But for now, we have some important things to look at. So what am I going to be watching moving forward? Nvidia is pumping, which is awesome. It actually is trying to hold above this new high right over here at this resistance at about this $480 level. It's currently at 481 at the time I'm recording this. But don't forget there's this gap down here at about this 472 area. So we're going to see if Nvidia could hold this level for the time being or not. There's a possibility that it might actually kind of cool off its RSI, come back down to retest this 470 breakout area, and then get a bounce and start continue pushing for 500 by Wednesday. That is a realistic possibility. If not, if it just holds 480 the entire time and does not even drop that much, it might just keep going. But I still think it's going to eventually get very close to 500 right before its earnings, as long as it holds above 480. And we're going to have to see if this thing could hold or not. Remember, there are two possibilities. It either comes down to fill the gap right here at 470, bounces off that, then pushes back to get closer to 500 by Wednesday, right? Or it just holds above 480, does not get much of a dip, and then it just starts pushing. It's got to be one of those two. I'm leaning a little bit more towards the first option where we get a slight pullback, because when you look at SPY, we're very, very overbought on the RSI, and we're likely going to see this thing kind of cool off a little bit. We're getting this rejection off this resistance trend line around this 442 area, very, very close to where this imbalance is. We might see a little pop to like the 442 and mid 442s and then come right back down. I think the market's going to get a slight pullback. A very healthy, tiny intraday pullback is all I'm talking about. We might come down to fill this gap down here around this like 439 area. If we break below 440, yes, I see that happening, just temporarily, nothing too crazy. Because remember, we were actually at 435 yesterday, and then we started pushing from 435 all the way back up to 440. So it's completely fine if we just drop a couple of dollars back down to 443 and then get a bounce after that, maybe even 438.5. I think the market's going to get a slight little drop, maybe 30 minutes after the market opens is when it starts, depending on the data. So look for a little pop, then a drop like this, and then a bounce as the most likely possibility. I'm not promising it. I'm just saying it's very probable based off this current trend, right? The RSI is like really, really overbaked right now. It's very, very overbought. So we might see something like this. Either we like pop a little bit, then we just, slowly drop a little bit and then get a bounce from here. Just like yesterday, how we dropped really hard with the falling wedge. Then we started to push. You could see something like this for today going into tomorrow. So I find that very, very likely. Another possibility would be it's not really much of a drop. We kind of just like drop a little bit to where this like gap support happens to be, and then we kind of bounce from there. So I find this very probable for today. There could be more upside coming, of course, but a little drop before we get that pop seems more and more probable. For the triple Q, I'm seeing the same thing. I mean, this thing is all the way up at 366. We have an unfilled gap down here. If we break below 365, I'm going to be looking for it to retest 364 or even 363.6 before it tries to get a bounce somewhere around there. Watch this 365 support just to be safe. And I do find it probable that it comes down like SPY and then tries to bounce. Oh, and by the way, for SPY, I forgot to mention one more thing. For SPY, one last thing. If it breaks below 440, that's going to be your trigger for this thing to come down to fill this gap, because this is where the previous resistance was. So this is the breakout right here, this 440 area. If it breaks below 440, watch it fill this gap all the way down to like the 439 area. It could even bounce off either 439 or 438.5 and then, try to continue pushing. So I just want to make that as clear as possible. Looking at Tesla stock, Tesla's not looking too bad in my opinion, based off what I saw from it. Tesla, let me just check if there's some kind of divergence on it. I actually need to pull up something else for it. Let me just double check something, because with this current formation, not always the best of signs. So let me just check the RSI. RSI has been declining, whereas the price was continuing to go up. So this is not the best of signs. It actually hit 241.5. It hit this during the pre-markets. It's a very, very overbought with the 78 RSI. I think it's going to likely, come down a little bit to fill this gap. A slight little drop to like 233 might happen. If it breaks below 240, you're going to be watching support at 236. And if that fails us, if 236 fails us, I think it's going to come down to fill this gap around 233, then bounce somewhere around here. It's going to try to bounce very close between 230 and like 232.5, then try pushing right back up, and it should hold up pretty decently in my opinion. But I find it very probable that Tesla's going to come very close to filling this gap, if not filling it. So you're going to be watching if it ends up going down to 235 and tries to bounce, or if it's like 233 and then it bounces, and then watch it try to bounce and make its way back up. Very similar to SPY. That's what I think is very probable. With Aapl, I'm seeing something very similar, because Apple's RSI, if you look at the 30 minutes time frame, the RSI is at 69, and it's also possibly forming I think it's forming a bearish divergence. Let me just double check that. It is technically forming one. We might see Aapl come down, fill this gap down at 175.5. So a slight pullback in the market intraday, a nice bounce after that, and then push right back up. If Aapl breaks below 176.5, there's a good chance it's going to come down to fill this gap and then bounce. And I think the odds greatly favor that. Not saying that I'm like a bear, just like how yesterday, right? We had this pullback right here. You guys remember that? Then we got a very nice bounce. We could see something later on today, a little drop, then a bounce, okay? And Aapl came very close to our target, so it's not looking too bad. Going forward, we could see the same thing. The dollar is starting to pump a little bit, so that can contribute to this potentially happening. It's actually up about a 0.11%. We'll see if the dollar tries to hold this level before it comes down, so that's going to be very telling. And besides that, Amazon, not looking too bad. Amazon also has this unfilled gap down here. I think it already filled the gap, so it might not drop that much. It could retest 134.5, maybe a little bit lower than that, then try to bounce. Not looking as bad. For Meta, however, Meta has this unfilled gap all the way down at about 289. Might come down to fill that gap at 289 to 288.75 and then bounce after the Fed's data comes out, maybe, or the Fed speakers speak, come down, bounce, and then start pushing even higher later on. So that's what I'm seeing for the market. Hopefully this was very helpful for you guys. I think that's very probable, at least based off my technical analysis. But watch your levels just to be safe. I called out some levels to watch for on Tesla, Nvda as well, and also on SPY. Watch and see if we hold above 440. If it breaks below it, that's going to be your signal for this thing to potentially drop a little bit more before getting a bounce at these lower levels. Okay, so 438.5 to 439. I find that very probable. So hopefully this was helpful. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next video later on. Thank you and peace out.